Ms. Dr. Amy Khor.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I thank members for their comments and support of the bill. I will now address the 4 broad areas brought up. First, the measures Singapore undertakes to meet our obligations under the Basel Convention. Second, the effects of the amendments on the industry. Third, our plans to develop our local recycling industry, particularly relating to plastics. Fourth, our plans to reduce excessive consumption of plastics and to close the plastic loop. Ms. Anthea Ong asked about our progress in implementing the Basel Convention. Since 1996, when we became a party to the Convention, we have issued an average of 150 Basel permits a year for the transboundary movement of waste. In 2018, NEA issued 36 import permits, 50 export permits, and 70 transit permits. The main destinations for Basel exports were Korea, Japan, France, and Thailand, with most of these shipments containing e-waste intended for recycling. Ms. Anthea Ong also asked how we ensure hazardous waste exported under the Basel Convention is properly treated. This is covered under the Prior Informed Consent Procedure, or PIC procedure, which is well established under the Convention. When companies apply to NEA for a Basel export permit, they are required to provide information on the treatment facility which the shipment is destined for. This information is forwarded to the relevant authorities in the state of import. NEA will not issue a Basel export permit to the company until the state of import evaluates the proposal and consents to accept the shipment. We take our obligations under the Basel Convention seriously and have taken action against companies for violations. Under the Hazardous Waste Control of Export, Import and Transit Act, or HWA, companies that falsely declare such waste or export such waste without a valid Basel export permit can be fined up to $300,000. Individuals who commit such offences can be fined up to $100,000 or imprisoned for up to 2 years or both. NEA works closely with Singapore Customs and the Immigration and Checkpoints authorities to enforce these regulations at our checkpoints. We also enjoy a close working relationship with international counterparts and cooperate with them to investigate any suspected illegal export of waste from Singapore. NEA had in fact investigated the case of Viral Green, which Ms. Anthea Ong raised. In this instance, the company had correctly declared the contents of the shipment as e-waste for recycling. The PIC procedure had been followed, and NEA had received consent from the relevant authority in Thailand for the import. These clarifications were carried in the same Eco-Business article. Similarly, in the case reported by Reuters, which Ms. Anthea Ong cited, none of the containers had been exported from or transited through Singapore. No Singapore companies had contravened the Basel Convention in any way, and the 2 Singaporeans had not violated the HWA. The case is currently under investigation by the Indonesian authorities. There are currently no plans to introduce extraterritorial offences in the HWA. The Basel Convention has nearly universal membership with 187 parties, and all our neighbouring countries are members. Singaporeans or Singapore-registered entities who contravene the Basel Convention can be prosecuted in their country of offence. Mr. Louis Ng and Dr. Chia Shilu asked about the impact of the amendments on our companies. NEA had consulted the industry prior to the introduction of these amendments. Our companies understood the need for the new measures and for Singapore to comply with our international obligations. We do not expect these amendments to disrupt the operations of our plastic recyclers and traders. There will not be additional regulations on the movement of most clean and homogeneous plastic recyclables, as these are not subjected to PIC under the Basel Convention. Mixed plastic recyclables can also continue to be exported as long as PIC is obtained from the state of import. To help companies comply with the requirements, NEA will guide companies through the Basel permit application procedures, particularly in the initial period after the new regulations come into effect. In fact, we hope that the local recycling industry will benefit from economic opportunities as clearer regulations on the flow of recyclables develop. This will facilitate the legitimate flow of recyclables and open up new markets for our local companies. As Mr. Chia Shi Lu and Ms. Antia Ong have pointed out, there are opportunities to promote a regional circular economy in line with the vision of our Zero Waste Master Plan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will now speak on the local plastic waste management landscape and our plans to develop local recycling capability and capacity, which Dr. Chia Shi Lu, Mr. Christopher D'Souza, and Mr. Louis Ng asked about. Plastic waste in Singapore is either recycled or incinerated. Such waste are not landfill. All general waste and recyclables must be collected by licensed collectors. Plastic recyclables that are segregated at source is sorted and sent for recycling either locally or overseas. On the other hand, plastic waste, which is not source segregated for recycling, is incinerated with other general waste at our waste-to-energy plants. In 2018, approximately 949,000 tons of plastic waste were generated in Singapore, which was about 12% of the total waste generated. 4% of the plastic waste generated was recycled, and of these, 7% was recycled locally, while the rest was sorted and exported for recycling. The plastics that are recycled are mainly post-industrial plastics that are clean and homogeneous, or recyclables from households that have been sorted and baled at our material recovery facilities. As we can see, packaging waste, including plastics, is generated in large quantities with a low recycling rate. As such, we have made packaging waste a priority waste stream in both the Zero Waste Master Plan and the Resource Sustainability Act. As Mr. Louis Ng has highlighted, we hope to further build up our local recycling capabilities to better extract resources from plastic waste. However, I would like to clarify that we are doing this not because we contribute to the global ocean plastics problem, but because we want to reduce the amount of plastics that we incinerate. Singapore does not contribute in any significant way to the ocean plastics problem. We do not landfill our plastic waste, but incinerate them at our waste-to-energy plants. Most of Singapore is a water catchment, meaning that our waterways are dammed up and plastics are removed from the waterways before they reach our reservoirs. We have been building up our waste management resilience, which is in line with the global movement towards proper treatment and management of waste. As a small country, in the face of carbon and resource constraints, we also want to enhance Singapore's resource resilience by reusing resources for as long as possible. Hence, our vision is to close the plastic waste loop locally where feasible and allow our plastic waste to be recovered and converted into useful resources again. At the same time, investing in new recycling technology and developing the industry will create economic opportunities and good jobs for Singaporeans. For example, McKinsey estimates a potential 4-fold increase in plastics reuse and recycling by 2030, worth an estimated US$60 billion. We are studying both mechanical and chemical recycling options. Mechanical recycling uses well-established technology to turn waste plastics into plastic pellets. We already have mechanical recycling plants in Singapore which treat our industrial plastic waste. These are operated by companies such as A-Star Plastics, Plaspark Union, and Ravago. Chemical recycling can potentially complement mechanical recycling. Waste plastics that are not suitable for mechanical recycling, such as used plastic bags, can be recycled into chemical feedstock through chemical recycling. We will share more on our plans to close the plastic loop at the upcoming Committee of Supply debate. Based on our consultations with industry players, the main impediments to greater recycling locally are the lack of economies of scale and low global demand. We will require further consultations with the local industry and economic agencies to determine the appropriate industry size and structure to suit the Singapore market. Our intent to build up local recycling capability is also a key reason why Singapore has not ratified the ban amendment, which Ms. Antia Ong asked about. The amendment was first introduced in 1995 to protect developing countries from the ill effects of hazardous waste exported by developed countries. The amendment bans all exports from developed to developing countries, hence its name. We believe that the legitimate movement of useful waste material does not just present economic opportunities for our companies, but allows Singapore to play our part in the safe handling of hazardous material in the region. For example, e-waste recycling companies in Singapore import e-waste from countries such as Japan, South Korea, and New Zealand, and treat them at our licensed facilities in an environmentally sound manner. This will be curtailed if we rectify the ban amendment. In fact, many OECD countries have not rectified the ban amendment yet, including countries with strong recycling industries, such as Japan and South Korea. We are also investing in research and development to develop local recycling solutions, as Dr. Chia Shi Lu and Mr. Louis Ng spoke about. The $45 million Closing the Waste Loop R&D initiative supports research into new circular economy solutions. For example, it has funded a research project that is studying how plastic-embedded multi-layer films, such as potato chip packaging, can be recycled. This involves developing a chemical recycling method that can separate and individually recycle the different layers from the multi-layer film. As Mr. D'Souza and Mr. Gan Thiam Poh have highlighted, it is key to reduce the generation of plastic waste in the first place. Last year, we introduced the Resource Sustainability Act, a landmark legislation to give effect to a regulatory framework to promote resource sustainability and support the management of our priority waste streams. This year, new regulations on the mandatory reporting of packaging data and 3R plans for packaging will take effect. As Mr. Gan Thiam Poh highlighted, such regulations will force companies to be more conscious of the amount of packaging used in their products and encourage them to identify ways to optimize packaging. The mandatory reporting framework will also lay the foundation for an EPR framework for packaging waste management. The EPR framework ensures that producers are responsible for the collection and recycling of the materials that they use to package their products. This will send economic signals to companies to take into account the cost of environmental externalities of their products. It will also encourage the designing of products so that less materials are used or the products can be more easily recycled. However, tackling the consumption of plastics cannot be done by the government alone. We are working closely with various stakeholders to reduce our consumption of disposables, including plastics. For example, the NEA's Say Yes to Waste Less campaign has partnered 1,600 premises to encourage consumers to reduce the use of disposables. We also want to partner Singaporeans to co-create other solutions to reduce the excessive consumption of plastics. A citizens' work group for Singaporeans from diverse backgrounds will be formed to work on measures to tackle the issue of excessive consumption of disposables in Singapore. We will announce further details on this later this year. Dr. Chia Shi Lu and Mr. Christopher D'Souza raised the issue of microplastics and microbits. We have in place comprehensive measures to address microplastics. For example, the Singapore Food Agency routinely takes samples of locally available food, including seafood, for testing to ensure compliance with our food safety standards. And these standards are aligned with international standards. At the same time, we recognize that the World Health Organization, the European Food Safety Authority, and the Food Agriculture Organization have assessed that microplastics either pose a low risk to human health or that more scientific evidence was required to assess the impact of ingesting plastic in food. PUB also treats all used water at our water reclamation plants to internationally recognized discharge standards using the latest technology. This includes the removal of most microplastics. NEA has therefore assessed that no further measures are needed at this point to manage the entry of microbits into our wastewater and into our environment until further scientific evidence emerges. While we have no plans to ban microbits in cosmetics, we encourage businesses to reduce the use of microbits in their products. I'm heartened that multinational corporations such as Johnson & Johnson and Unilever, as well as our own local retailers like Guardian Singapore and Watsons, have phased out microbits in their products. We will continue to monitor international developments on microplastics, including microbits in cosmetics. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me conclude. Plastic waste is a waste stream of concern for us, and we are tackling it through regulations under the Resource Sustainability Act, as well as other plans to reduce plastic consumption and promote plastic recycling under the Zero Waste Master Plan. In addition, as a responsible member of the international community, Singapore remains committed to upholding our obligations under the Basel Convention. The Hazardous Waste Control of Export, Import and Transit Amendment Bill will enable Singapore to comply with the new controls on the transboundary movement of certain categories of plastic waste under the Basel Convention. The bill will also allow for more effective administration and enforcement of the Convention. The amendments to the Basel Convention will provide greater clarity on plastic waste standards and better regulate its transboundary movement. In doing so, we hope that new economic opportunities will be created and the local recycling industry will seize this opportunity, which will create good jobs for Singaporeans. Deputy Speaker, sir, I beg to move.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Hazardous Waste Control of Export, Import and Transit Amendment Bill.
SMS committee stage what day?
Now, sir, I beg to move that Parliament will immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill.
The question is that Parliament will immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clauses 1 to 9 stand part of the bill. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Bill to be reported. Dr. Amy Khor.
Deputy Speaker, I beg to report that the bill has been considered in committee and agreed to without amendment.
A third reading what day?
Now, sir, I beg to move that the bill be now read a third time.
The question is that the bill be now read a third time. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Hazardous Waste, Control of Export, Import and Transit Amendment Bill.